Hello, and welcome to TableTakes presented by Gen Con. My name is Emma. I'm here today with Derek and Bonsai. Christian is, again, surfing through the rifts and is unable to join us.
Oh. Yeah, the rift apocalypse in Alabama.
Yeah, the rift apocalypse. So he's not here with us today. We do have a lot of fun and exciting stuff to get to, so let's dive right in. Bonsai, I believe you have something to tell us about a minis game with a theme that we will all know and recognize.
Oh yes, I don't know. Have you heard that Skyrim is almost everywhere? Now you can have it as a tabletop mini from the same Modifius, the same makers of Wasteland Warfare. They are making
the Fallout mini game.
Oh, sorry, the Fallout mini game. Sorry, the Fallout mini game.
Yeah.
Wasteland Warfare. They're now making an Elder Scroll edition that's coming out this Christmas. So if you want to go ahead and have that set up for your Christmas wish list, go ahead and put it down. It's going to include 6 heroes and 15 generic troops of various different varieties. It's, of course, the 2 main factions, Stormcloak and Imperial Legion. So yeah, that's a cool thing you can go ahead and look forward to. It isn't a dungeon crawler. It's more of a battle-esque type of setting, but it's still...
Yeah, it seems like a kind of a relatively traditional minis game.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to play the Fallout one. I know, and my encounter with Elder Scrolls is kind of bouncing off the video game a couple times, so I don't know exactly how the lore plays out. But it does seem like, shockingly, there are a lot of people who are way into Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
Whoa, really?
So this sounds like something they might want to try.
If nothing else, you'll get the really cool minis. You know, you might not have that same game experience where you're like, it's a role RPG, digital RPG, you're going through the world, the exploration.
Probably doesn't have rules for stealing things from people.
Right.
Or putting buckets on their heads.
Or
so you can steal from
over-encumbered.
people.
Or going up a 90-degree angle with a horse, right? There's a lot of stuff in there that won't be included.
Although I will be really impressed if the miniature game has rules for that.
Well, I guess we'll wait and see, because that is coming again for Christmas 2019. So I'm sure it'll come up again once we have some more details about that. So speaking about adventures and role-playing.
All right.
So we talked a little bit last week. I believe that was right before the big D&D weekend where they had their big show, and a lot of stuff came out of that. So Derek, you want to talk a little bit about that?
So hashtag D&D Live 2019 happened last week, and a whole lot of news came out of that. Yeah, hashtag. We had some of our own predictions that turned out to not be true, but the big reveal of the new plotline for the year is Descent in a Journey Through Avernus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like a Baldur's Gate thing. It's still kind of rooted in Forgotten Realms, but apparently you're going to travel to Baldur's Gate and you're going to find out about some corruption and some shady dealings in the city, and then you're going to find out the demons are behind that, and then somehow you're going to end up in hell on a giant infernal war machine, like barreling through the blasted wasteland, Mad Max style.
Mad Max.
So this is Mad Max plus hell plus D&D is the big kind of campaign story for D&D for 2019, and people are very excited. Like all the shots of people playing the preview content at the D&D Live event were very impressive, very exciting. So a lot of people are really, really jazzed about it.
And also the minifig of the car.
The mini of a giant car.
Yeah.
So I think apparently WizKids is producing the miniature of the car you get to drive. And I guess there's actually some variants of it, because the Beetle and Grimms, if everybody remembers from last year, is the company that produces like the platinum and silver boxes, like the really fancy deluxe editions of things. And they are producing a special hood or cover or something like that. So there's some variant that you can get through there. I don't know if WizKids is going to be producing other variants as well.
Style points. I will say, you mentioned that somehow you end up in hell. I feel like that's how a lot of these adventures go. Like when we went to fight Strahd, we were just like in Waterdeep, and then all of a sudden we were not there anymore.
That's the magic of Ravenloft.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've run a lot of adventures through Avernus. Like actually, amusingly enough,
Surprise, surprise.
yeah, amusingly enough, the game that I run for kids started out in hell.
Oh,
and
for kids?
because I was running Planescape with the D&D 5 playtest rules.
Okay.
And that was the amusing time where I'm running a game for some kids in hell in public, and I was having parents come up to me and be like, "Hey, how can my kid join this?" And I was like, "You're paying attention to
What's going on?
They're literally talking to a pillar of skulls of murderers who always tell lies, and they're trying to bargain with a demon, and you want, okay, all
See,
right.
that's like a total 180 since the 90s.
Yeah.
Like it used to be like, don't play that game. It's a devil game. They're all devil
Yeah.
worshippers.
And now they're like, go play that game. It's a devil game. That's
It's
sweet.
devil worshippers.
So that's the big storyline, and that probably means that storyline is then going to be incorporated into, like I didn't follow all the rules or all the news about their partners, but that usually ends up kind of filtering out to other games that they produce or other licensed games. The video games usually have some element of that, even if it's not in the same setting. But that's the general theme that should kind of be permeating a lot of the D&D releases throughout the rest of the year.
Nice.
But that wasn't the only news that came out, because there was also, if anybody remembers the Stranger Things starter set, it seems like they're doing another starter set, but this time Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
So if Rick and Morty is more your kind of thing, especially because they've been doing the Rick and Morty D&D comics. I don't know if anybody's been following those.
And I think the new season just got announced as well.
Probably. So they're doing a new introductory set, basically that same idea, themed around Rick and Morty specifically.
So, and this is separate from the D&D Essentials, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the thing I'm really excited about is this new D&D Essentials. They were saying they released the first D&D starter set about 5 years ago. So over the course of 5 years, they've had time to kind of hone it. And the thing about the starter set is it was pretty, I think it either came with the beginner's guide or just like had the book in here, but this is specifically tuned to make it easy for new players to get in. It's got a lot about character creation.
Which was something that was missing from the original starter set. Is there's not really much character creation in there at all, I don't think.
Yeah.
I think it's just the pre-generated characters, although you could use the online rules to make some, so it wasn't like you couldn't do it, but the focus was very much, here's an adventure, here's some pre-gens, go play it for a little bit.
And I'll say, even as a person who's played D&D like a few times, read a bunch of the books, that is one of the most difficult parts. And often as a new player, you have someone to guide you along that journey. So if you're getting in, if you're a family, if you're kids, if you're parents, and just having someone, you don't have someone there to guide you, I think this Essentials kit can be a great tool to do that.
The way that I like this is that they're kind of setting up this little area as a, when you go into a game, you have like your newbie zone.
Yeah, exactly.
This is like the newbie zone for for Dungeons and Dragons.
Your initial spawn zone.
Your
So
spawn
now
zone.
when we sign up for D&D, we have to
In
decide what
the-
server we're going to be on
Yeah,
to make sure we
that's
can play with our
what's-
friends.
It also has a new adventure written by Chris Perkins, who I didn't realize was the principal narrative designer of D&D. So that's pretty cool to see some new flavor stuff. Dragon of Ice Spire Peak. It sounds very classic.
Well, the thing that I think really is interesting about that, though, is that's specifically a one-on-one variant of
Right,
D&D.
exactly.
So one game master and one player, which does make it even more accessible in a sense, because then you could buy that and play it with your parents or your brother. So like it makes it easier to find someone to play with if you only need one player.
Yeah.
So there's that, but I found that really interesting because this is, I think, the first time that D&D has really pushed like that one-on-one experience.
Yeah.
And the only other RPGs that are really doing that right now is Pelgrane Press has a line of like one-on-one games, like Cthulhu Confidential. They just announced a one-on-one variant of Night's Black Agents. So it's interesting to kind of see that also be reflected here in a different way. Like the only other time that I really remember an RPG that was emphasizing one-on-one play was way back in the 90s. Do you remember the movie Ghost Dog?
No.
No?
No.
So like Ghost Dog, I think
good
was
at
Forrest
1932.
Whitaker as like a kind of like an urban samurai
Okay.
thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was like an urban warrior who was using like Hagakure or something like that as a code of ethics for him on the street.
Okay.
And he was like acting like a samurai and pledging himself to a lord, and the rest of the people in the movie were like, all right, you're just weird, but that's fine. It was a really neat movie, and for some reason it had an RPG called Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai that was a one player, one GM RPG. It was a very surprising release.
See, when you said Ghost Dog in the 90s, I was picturing like a CGI, like actual
Airbud
ghost,
kind of thing.
who like had to come back and like take care of his family.
Well, the rules don't say dogs can't play D&D.
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, there is a whole like campaign that is dogs.
Pugmire?
Yep.
Pugmire.
Yep.
Pugmire. I was trying to think of the name.
Pugmire, actually, they just launched a Kickstarter for Pirates of Pugmire.
Oh.
My gosh.
So,
Pirate dogs.
but
I like the
Pirate
minifigs though.
the pirate puppies of Pugmire.
Yeah.
oh boy.
Maybe we should move on.
But
Alright.
Bonsai, that's not the only thing that was announced, was it?
No. We have the Eberron campaign. So if you guys like kind of like a steampunk-esque D&D setting, but with less with less science and more magic involved, especially if you started at 3.5, Eberron was initially a winner of a contest, basically fan-made winner of a contest to, based off of the 3.5 universe. It so far has been like pushed to the side, and people are like, so are they gonna make one? And now they're officially having a hardcover for this set, and also they're having a special like bundle kit for the 40th anniversary. And you can get stuff in like, no,
I think that's Alien.
that's Alien. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wrong one. But yeah, it's very exciting because they finally finished like clunking out the third generation of artificers, and they also have something that are golems called Warforges, I believe.
Warforged.
Yes, Warforged. And
this was confirmed by Keith Baker.
Yes.
So this is from the source.
So basically, Wizards has been heavily focused on the Forgotten Realms as like the core D&D experience for all of 5th edition, basically. We have stepped away from that a little bit with Ravenloft. We've stepped away from that with Ravnica, which was a really exciting kind of release.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been like another kind of hardcover physical release that really leaves Forgotten Realms. They did release an Eberron PDF, the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron. It's on the DM's Guild. That's very cool. It has a lot of Eberron material in it, but I think a lot of fans were really waiting for something physical to go buy in the store for it to like really return. So to get confirmation that yes, something is in the works, yes, it will be coming out relatively soon, is very nice. Because for me as a player who wants a weirder setting, who would rather play an Eberron than say Forgotten Realms, that's gratifying to me because it does demonstrate that Wizards will hopefully continue to experiment with that model. Like, I would love if every year they did their 2 big Forgotten Realms adventures. Like this year they have Ghosts of Saltmarsh and they have Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus. Great, that's wonderful. I can adapt those if I need. But then having one other release that year that is a different thing, I would love to have a new setting and an adventure for that setting, or another big campaign adventure thing for something they've released before. Again, Ravenloft would be in that category possibly, but specifically Ravnica. I'm really hoping they can repeat that kind of pattern. I would love it on a yearly basis.
Yeah,
but
so you just want more.
Yeah, I want more not Forgotten Realms is what I want.
Yeah.
All right.
So lots of D&D news.
Lots of D&D, yeah.
Speaking about things that people are excited about, I guess.
We gotta work on those transitions.
I gotta work on the segues. I'm not the king of segues, unfortunately. But yeah, we have the Spiel de Jahres nominees. They've been announced. If you don't know what the Spiel de Jahres is, on a top level, it's just good games. So it's an award that's done every year. The games more granularly, more specifically though, these are games that are released in Germany. So some of the games you're going to see on this list, you might think like, oh, that's been out for a little bit, for a while. These games were released in Germany in the last 12 months. So specifically, something might have been in the US for a while and then gone to Germany, which is actually a little weird because I feel more frequently games are released in Germany and then eventually come here.
Yeah.
Well, the Spiel de Jahres is also like, it is possibly one of the most prestigious awards that a board game can
Yeah,
win.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially considering how long it was that all of our great board games, or a bulk of our great board games, were being imported from Germany.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of, this is how this award was established. So it is kind of interesting to see us reverse pollinating at this point.
Yeah. And I think one of the things too, because often they'll put the stamp on the game, and the Spiel de Jahres bumps up the sales of games by thousands of copies. So if you see this mark on the games, or just listen to the games we're going to list off here, you know that you got some good stuff. So first up on the list is Just One. Oh, first, before I already went into the things.
Oh, wow.
Rewind a little bit. So there's 3 categories for the Spiel de Jahres.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Spiel de Jahres, also just means like game of the year. It's a little translation for this. So there's the main one that's just like, hey, best games. There's the Kinderspiel, which is the kids' games, although still like fairly technical. All of this is within the family game sphere. So none of it leans like super kids or like super heavy Euro games. So it's within that. So there's the regular game, the kids games, and then the Kinderspiel, which is like the expert complicated. But again, none of that's going to go quite to the most complicated games you've ever played.
And these are all, board games, so they're not going to include role-playing games. They're not really going to include miniature games. They're going to include things that are broadly accessible, even in the expert category.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. Just one you've probably heard of. It's by Ludovic Rowdy and Bruno Sauter. This one, you might have seen it on Twitter or social media, because a lot of people will post pictures and clues and just play the game that way. Basically, you're trying to give clues to someone who is trying to guess a word, but if multiple people give the same clue, it gets erased. So it's a little bit tricky. It's a great party game, good for lots of people. You can combine sets to play with a whole big group. Very fun game. Second on the list is Llama, and this is actually a acronym in German, although it's also llama themed. So it works a little better in German because acronym doesn't quite translate, but it's like lay down all your minus points.
Okay.
So it's a game about negative scoring, and anything left in your hand is negative points. So it's, I wanted to say it's a little Uno-esque, but obviously I think a lot better and more strategic.
It wouldn't be nominated for this if it was Uno.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's llamas.
Yes, and there's llamas. It's got a really cool, fun theme to it. Plays very fast. Looks like definitely something I'm interested to check out. And that's by Rainer Knizia. Next up is Wereword. So I mentioned games that have been out for a while. This one was released in 2017 in the US. This is by Ted Alspach. And if you like word games, but you also want to be able to betray the people that you're playing with.
Yes, team kill.
Which we have a lot of people here would definitely be interested in that. So some people, everyone's giving clues for the words, but one person is just lying. And then there's a seer who's trying to balance that out. So those are the games for the Spiel de Jahres, the general award. Next up is the Kinderspiel. First we have Fabulantica, fairy tale memory game with catchy travel mechanism according to BGG. So it's got really cool art. I believe the people are, they've been through some sort of like attack, and now they're all hiding in towers. And you're trying to go around and rescue people. Next on the list is Go Gecko Go by Jürgen Adams. It's a roll and move game about piling smaller animals on top of larger animals.
Okay.
So it's kind of maybe like a Chutes and Ladders or something, but then with animal upon animal.
Okay.
Which sounds great because the smaller animals are piggybacking.
I just feel sorry for whatever the big animals are. They're gonna get crushed.
Right, they're strong. It's like
Sure,
they're
sure.
fun, right?
They can handle it.
They can take it.
Yeah.
All right, third on the list of the Kinderspiel games is Tal de Wickinger by Wilfred and Mary Fort. Translates to Valley of the Vikings, and it's about an annual barrel bowling contest where you're trying to actually roll your ball and knock down the right barrels.
Okay.
So I think a lot of these games were actually published in Germany, and I think they definitely embrace a little bit more of the dexterity side of things. So,
well, I mean, like the Kinderspiel stuff is all going to be great if you have kids that you're trying to get games for.
Yeah.
I think these are always like if you're wondering what games to maybe start training your kids on to turn them into a hardcore gamer, these are probably good bets.
Kinderspiel.
They also sound like fine motor skill games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to play these games. I am a child, though, so I'm excited about this.
So you're the child, we're the betrayers. Got it.
Yeah.
It's going to work out great. Third up is the Kinderspiel, which is the expert or more complicated games. Carpe Diem by Stephen Feld. Stephen Feld.
He's not here to correct us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's Steffenfeld. Anyways, it's a Feld game, so if you know what that means, you will like it. If you don't know what that means, you probably won't like it. It's very dry. I'll put it that way. It says the description on Board Game Geek is like 2 sentences, and it's like, yeah, we're doing the stuff. This is a Feld game. We're doing the tiles, doing the drafting, trying to get the most points.
But again, like this is nominated for the Spiel. So if you are the kind of person who likes Euro games and likes games that are drafting and allocation and points and building, then this is going to be an extremely solid bet.
Yes.
Either way.
And I think this is a good thing if you're sifting through all those games. Again, if you really like those Euro games, the Spiel de Jahres is a great way to look at particular games and say, like, okay, I know, I have a really strong sense that this is going to be a hit.
Well, that's a good kind of I don't know, like way to explain how I look at a lot of these.
Yeah.
Like I don't usually worry about what wins.
Yeah.
Especially like for good awards. For like the Diana Jones Awards or for the Spiel de Jahres Awards, I don't really worry about what wins. Just look at what's nominated, because that's a vote of confidence in that, you know, these are all super high quality games.
Yes.
They may not be your favorite game, but just because everybody has different interests, but they're not going to be a terrible game by any means.
Yeah, they're nominated for reasons.
Yep. So like this is going to be a quality game that you can compare things to. So if you're curious about getting into a genre, or if you are just trying to figure out how to navigate the thousands of games that are released every year at this point, these kind of help you build a short list of things to pay attention to.
I like to point out Luxor, I believe it is. It was one of the nominees last year, I think, potentially for the Kinderspiel. And the face of it felt like kind of a roll and move, but you're moving with cards in your hand, but it had a cool mechanic where you could only play the cards on the end. So you had a hand of 5, and they kind of trickled to either side. So looking at the theme of it, and it was kind of like, oh, it looks a little bit generic, but the game itself was very tight. So I've had great experiences just hopping into these games. Second on the Kinderspiel nominations list is Detective by Ignaca Cibicek, Przemysław Reimer, and Jakub Lapat. I did look up those pronunciations beforehand because I wanted to do the best I could. So hopefully those are close enough. Detective, it's a card-based puzzle-solving gameplay with an app. And you said that you got to check this out a little bit?
Yeah, so I think I got to play a little bit of this at PAX West. I don't think we did a full case, but there was a really interesting element where you had an app. So it was kind of like XCOM in that you had an app that gave you information about how to play. But you would go to places, you would interview people, you would indicate that to the app. That would then potentially open up new places for you to go. You had a certain amount of time to spend in different areas. You would even have the ability to, research further within the app. There was a lot of interesting interplay that did feel like it was simulating the feeling of being a team of detectives trying to solve a case together with kind of disparate threads that you're sorting through. But it didn't feel like, because of the app, it didn't feel like it was just like, well, we need to collect 3 cubes to unlock this thing. It felt a lot more organic and natural. So it's the kind of game I would love people to try just for that app integration and to see how different it is. It
sounds like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, the video game from the 90s.
I loved that game so much.
Right.
It taught me what bat guano was.
Right, bat guano. That's where we all learned it. That and Doom or something. Anyways, last but absolutely certainly not least, you know it, you love it, Wingspan by Elizabeth Hargrave.
Wingspan.
Yeah,
the birds.
I'm feeling the hotness here. So you've heard about this game, blowing up the charts, hot on Board Game Geek, hot pretty much everywhere. If you haven't heard about it, it's a game about birds. Feeding the birds, laying eggs, like very combo-y and trying to like make different combinations and get your engine to go off. So yeah, very excited. Lots of fun stuff here. Definitely, if you haven't had a chance to check these out, do so, because these are going to be fun.
They're all strong votes of confidence, basically.
Yep. Yeah. Moving on to, I guess...
I would go with, speaking of classics.
Speaking of classics, yeah, sure, we'll go with that.
Go ahead.
All right, good. All right. Speaking of classics, Lord of the Rings. The One Ring RPG of Lord of the Rings is getting a new edition from Cubicle 7. I think we mentioned this I don't know if we mentioned the new edition, but we did. I think we touched on the One Ring for a couple different reasons. But it's a very gorgeous game. If you are really big into Lord of the Rings lore, then this is absolutely an RPG you need to check out because it's been diving into that world a great deal. So they're coming out with a new edition that's going to have like a new core book, a starter set, monster, bestiary, all the kind of stuff that you need for the edition. There's a setting book from Minas Tirith. There's a Gondor adventure, and then apparently the long-anticipated Mines of Moria adventure is finally coming out. But the big thing seems to be that it's moving the timeline forward 25 years.
Yeah.
So I believe
25.
the first edition was before the death of Smaug.
I think it was 5 years after.
Okay, yeah, it was
5 years, and so it's 20 years.
Yep. So now it's like well beyond that period of time. So they're kind of advancing as you're progressing through the novels, basically.
Nice.
But the really surprising thing to me is that this new second edition is fully compatible with the first edition, which seems like it's not a different edition. It's just a development of it. I mean, it's RPGs are a little bit odd in that they don't, I guess, have a tradition of doing that with RPGs, with releases. So it'll be interesting to see how this is received.
Yes.
It's usually more definite, right? Like
Yeah.
one or the other.
But it does seem odd that, it's a new edition. But do fans want a new edition? Do they have concerns with the rules? Like, because I think you have the two camps of people who want everything to be compatible with what they bought.
Yes.
But then you have the folks who want to see the rules improved and developed. And how you satisfy all of them is always really difficult.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're trying to kind of walk the tightrope to accomplish that.
Yeah.
I think for the why I'm excited about this is just like having a better organized book.
Sure.
So you don't have to go like page 8, then page 200, then let's go back to page 13.
It is a chance for them to redo the layout, which
Yes.
can certainly improve a lot of things.
Yeah. So.
But again, a gorgeous RPG. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan and an RPG player, you really should check it out.
But yeah. Oh, let me just rip into this conversation. Speaking of rip, have you heard about the new Alien RPG? It's coming out, going live May 25th tomorrow. Ripley, get it? All right. Anyways, so
Believe it or not, I do get it.
I get it.
I guess.
That's
But
good.
yeah, so from the same creators of the Year Zero engine, Free League, they are releasing a beautiful set or like RPG that deals with the alien universe. They have more creatures expanding that universe. They also have a cinematic mode and a campaign mode. And this is kind of like if you want a game that you just can grind and feel like it's almost hopeless, this is the game for you. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had talked about it when it originally got announced, and because they were describing it in a really weird way with this campaign mode and then the cinematic mode,
Yes.
and they were using interesting video game terms to kind of describe the different ways you might play it.
Yeah.
But the kind of key thing here is the pre-orders are going up tomorrow.
Yes.
And if you pre-order, you apparently immediately get PDF access to those cinematic rules.
Yes.
So if you're really curious, like we were, about how this is actually going to work out, this is going to be your chance to actually play some of it before it comes out.
And it's not a small PDF. It's 168 pages.
Woo!
That's a good chunk.
And this is part of what we were talking about earlier is actually capturing that horror movie experience. Because with the campaign mode, with most role-playing games, like, sure, your characters might die off, but in general, it can be a feel-bad, and most people don't want that. Whereas with a cinematic experience, like, you do want to have, like, that feeling of, like, oh, everyone's going to die. Maybe it be not a total thing, you're not going too deep into it, but yeah, so it'd be fun to see how they manage to pull that off.
And I'm excited too because one of the things you can pre-order is like a super limited edition leather cover alien book. So I may not be able to resist that. We'll see. I have to see what the price is.
Just for the flavor.
Yeah, and there's a lot of extra things too. Like I kind of flipped a little bit earlier, but it's okay because this one will also have a special edition 40th limited edition core rule book that also you can get some cool DM screens, dice, reference cards. All of these are available.
Wait, there's dice?
Yes, there's dice. There's dice.
I like dice.
It is a role-playing game, so
It is
chances
a
are high
roll.
there's dice.
There might be dice.
But like fancy custom dice, maybe with like alien faces.
Yeah,
Probably.
alien themed, or
Why? Why do you take all my money?
Because that's the
That's the
point of
point.
capitalism.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. Shut up and take my money. Yeah, so that's all we have for headlines.
Yeah.
That's our headlines.
Yeah.
So now let's get into a very exciting special segment. Are you ready for this?
Oh
Are
my
you
gosh,
ready?
I don't know if I'm ready. So it's a day of firsts.
Yep.
Spotted upon the horizon here
In a modern era.
in a modern era.
Ooh.
We have our very first guest here on TableTakes, coming to us live here from our table. Do we have everything set up, tech people? Can I do it? All right. Ethan Fleischer, a senior game designer at Wizards of the Coast, specifically working on Magic the Gathering and Modern Horizons. So we're going to be talking to Ethan today. We're going to have some spoilers, card spoilers. I'm
Card
very excited.
spoilers.
We're gonna 2 cards we get to reveal.
2 cards that we're going to
They
reveal.
were nice enough to give us 2, and Ethan was nice enough to join us to tell us about them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very exciting to be here. I didn't realize I was your first guest. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
indeed an honor.
This is monumental. So you want to go ahead and start off. So I know you're all very excited about the cards, but we're going to drag out the excitement until peak excitement mode. So
Yes.
first, Ethan, how about you talk a little bit about who you are and why we should be excited about your personage?
All right. So as you said, I'm a senior game designer at Wizards of the Coast. I have led the design of several Magic sets, including Journey into Nyx, Oath of the Gatewatch. I co-led Amonkhet. I led Commander 2014, 2016. And the core set 2019 that just came out pretty recently. And I also co-led the design of Modern Horizons, which is the new Magic set that's going to be coming out on June 14th.
Nice. So now that I've said that you're first guest, I can't frame this exactly how I was going to, but so we always like to throw it to our guests to
Long-standing
It is a
tradition.
tradition that starts now.
It's a long-standing
Starts
tradition
now.
that starts right now to talk about magic and what magic is. That's a big question, but let's see
Yeah, I
where
mean,
we go.
obviously, most of your audience is pretty heavily invested in tabletop gaming, so
Yeah.
you've probably heard of it. But just in case there's anyone out there, Magic is the very first trading card game where you collect cards and build your own deck, and then fight your deck against your opponent's deck. Each player takes the role of a wizard, and each of the cards in your deck represents a different magic spell.
Nice. So we're talking specifically, you talked about a lot of the different sets that you designed, but the one that's coming out on June 14th is Modern Horizons, which is actually for the modern format. And I think even amongst people who know about Magic, they don't necessarily know about Modern. So if you want to talk a little bit about Modern specifically and how
Right.
that differs from other formats.
So Magic isn't really just one game. It is a sort of game system, and the cards are the pieces that you use in the games. But we have a variety of formats where you have access to different cards. Some cards are legal in some formats, and some cards are not legal. So the most common competitive format is Standard, which uses cards from the last year and a half to 2 years. But we have this much larger format called Modern that goes back about 16 years now. So it has about 16 years worth of cards in it.
Yeah.
And for reference, we release around 1,000 cards per year. So that's a lot of cards.
Yeah, it's 16,000 cards to draw from.
It's not quite that many.
Yeah.
It's not quite 1,000 per year, but
Yeah.
it's pretty close. So the rule for Modern, though, is that every card in Modern had to have been legal in Standard at one point during that 16-year period, up until Modern Horizons. Modern Horizons is the first set that we're making that just short circuits Standard legality and goes straight into Modern. And so normally we have to be a little careful when we're designing the cards, because Standard is a small format with not very many cards in it. If we put something in that's too powerful or too weird, it could upset the whole format and become wildly imbalanced, and then everyone stops going to tournaments and we lose a lot of money.
Right.
So we have a little more freedom with Modern Horizons because they don't have to enter the Standard format to just design whatever we want, and it only has to play well in the modern format and in the limited format where you're just using Modern Horizons.
Well,
Yeah.
so to that question, does that mean that the cards are only going to be in Modern and none of them are going to be in Standard? Or will some of the cards from the set be made eligible for Standard?
None of the cards will be eligible for Standard. They're just
Oh.
going directly into Modern, and yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, you can use them in the formats that are even larger than Modern, that encompass all the cards, Vintage and Legacy and Commander.
Yeah.
They'll also be legal in those formats.
One of the things you mentioned before the show, too, was the fact that this theme is, I don't know if athematic is the right word, but you don't have a core unifying theme for it. So that gave you a little more control as well, right?
Right. The sort of, the theme, if you will, is that it is a Magic set about the game of Magic.
Yeah,
Normally
yeah.
when we make a set, it's like, okay, this year we're going to do a set about Greek mythology, or this time we're going to do the Gothic horror set. This, for Modern Horizons, it was very much, we're going to make a Magic set about Magic, and we are going to reward players for playing lots of Magic. Like, if you like, it's like the Avengers Endgame was like,
Yeah.
did you watch all of the Marvel movies? You're
Yeah.
gonna love this, right?
This is set, I've been looking at some of the spoilers myself, and it's very much a loving homage to the players of Magic. Speaking about looking at the spoilers, I think we
Oh.
should hop right in.
Well, we did have a question from chat
Oh, chat.
about
Oh,
loving
excellent.
homage. Estraven Eternal asked what role nostalgia played in how you decided to kind of what to incorporate and what to put into Modern Horizons. I think they commented that it seemed like you had a really good balance you did a good job balancing kind of the desires of different crowds and different demographics within Magic. So do you want to kind of touch on that?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely thought about all the different types of players, with one exception, which is the new player.
Sure.
That the new player is right out. They're
Yeah.
not welcome to apply. I don't think this is a good set to start playing Magic with.
No.
The last set I made, Core Set 2019, that's a great set to start playing Magic with.
Yeah.
But this one is very much for the super fans. But that includes lots of different types of super fans. You know, it includes the sort of the storyline goobs who have been paying attention. You know, there's a whole storyline that is associated with the game that's been going on for basically the entire life of the game, 26 years now.
Yeah.
So we have all kinds of references to that stuff mixed in there. References to Magic sets, basically going back from the beginning of Magic up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. The most recent stuff we didn't reference nearly as much.
Yeah,
but for
yeah.
like the longtime fans, you're going to see, references to cards and settings from those earlier Magic sets in there. A lot of references to old tournament playable cards remixed with other ones. We tried to stick to cards that people would be likely to remember rather than referencing really obscure cards that nobody cares about anymore.
Yeah.
There's over that number of years there have been some hits, but a lot of
Yeah.
this is also
I imagine there's one fan somewhere who's just like, no, my card,
Right.
the one card I love.
if your favorite card doesn't get referenced, I'm sorry, but maybe we'll do a sequel set someday.
I was gonna wait, but I can't wait anymore. Like I had to talk about the Bears because when I was coming into Magic, that was one of the things. Like I was doing limited, people were trying to explain the values of things to me, and they're like, "Oh, a bear, it's a 2/2 for 2."
Right.
Basically, I'm like, is it actually a bear though? Well, it's not really a bear. I mean, it was a bear, but it's not usually a bear. And I'm like, okay. So I never knew it as a bear, and then it scales for like a 3/3 for 3, and it's kind of like, oh, it's generally fine, but.
Right, a bear in the very first Magic set had this card called Grizzly Bears.
Yeah.
That was a 2-mana 2/2 creature.
Yeah.
And we actually made several other bears that were also 2-mana 2/2 creatures.
Yeah.
But after a while, we're like, okay, that's enough. We're going to stop doing this. But the sort of slang term bear, 2-mana 2/2, has entered the lexicon of Magic players.
And now you have cards like a Eula Queen among bears. It's a 2/2 for 2, but it's a legendary bear and it's got stuff.
Yeah.
So-
It cares about bears,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
She's
it's
the
a Care-
queen of
it's
the
a Care Bear?
bears.
It's a Care
It's a Care
Bear.
Bear.
She's a Care Bear. And whenever another bear enters the battlefield, you can make it twice as big. You can make it a double bear, essentially.
Double
Give
bear.
it 2+1/+1 counters to turn
Bears
it
all
into
the
a
way
4/4.
down.
Yeah.
Or you can have a bear fight something, which where they deal damage to each other.
Yeah.
Because more recently, we've started printing a lot of these fight cards that make two creatures fight, and
Yeah.
we just keep putting bears in the art. It's
Yeah.
always just like, here's a guy punching a bear, here's a guy punching a dragon, here's a dragon punching a bear, and now we have a bear punching a guy in the most recent set.
I didn't because I love the fight mechanic, and I didn't realize it was all bears. I have to go back and
There's
look
a
at all the
lot of
art
bears.
now. Awesome.
It's kind of a thing now.
Yeah, we're learning
Bears
all
like
sorts
to
of
fight.
stuff. All right. Anyways, now
Ooh,
as
can
long
we
as
get
there's no
to
more
see?
chat questions, we're gonna go to the spoilers.
Oh yeah.
Ooh,
Let's do some previews.
spoilers.
Yeah. So, do we want to talk around this first, or just mention the card? Do we have any?
We
do you
we
any
have we have an
preference?
order of slides that we will build up to an ultimate
Okay.
review.
All right.
Excellent.
Oh, okay.
And I believe
I'll-
it's in this order, right?
All right.
Yep.
So one of the tools we used for evoking that nostalgia was to just cram lots and lots of old keyword mechanics into the set. Normally we have like between 3 and 5 keywords in a set. This time I think we have over 60.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
totally insane. And so we brought back lots and lots of old keywords, not all of them, but quite a pile of them. So one of the keywords we brought back was from Urza's Saga, that was back in the late 90s, and it's a keyword called Echo, where you sort of get to make a down payment on a card. You cast the card, usually it's a creature, and on the next turn, you have to pay the echo cost or you have to sacrifice it. So it allows you to sort of split up the cost for the creature over 2 turns. So that was one that we brought back. So we have Goblin War Buggy as our example of like one of the original echo cards. So for our preview card here, it's Orcish Hellraiser, and this one has echo also, and it's a very aggressive red creature.
Yeah.
Aggro deck.
Yeah. So this one definitely wants to be in an aggro deck, and it's sort of bringing back that mechanic, but it's also a spiritual descendant in a more subtle way to a card called Keldon Marauders, in that it when it enters and it leaves, you get to deal some damage. So you're always going to deal some damage, no matter kind of what the scenario is, no matter what changes in the battlefield between when you cast it and when your opponent had their turn. You can be like, I don't really want to pay the echo cost. I'm just going to let it die and deal some more damage.
Yeah.
Or if the coast is clear, then you pay the echo cost and you attack with it. And then later when it dies, you can deal some extra damage. So it's very good for an aggressive deck.
Yeah, that's very red, right? It's like
Yes.
you're doing damage, you're storing up damage, you're holding back damage, and then there's more damage. It's just like damage.
If anybody likes to deal damage, it's red.
I feel like it's also like a little bit of a troll card because you can bypass over.
Technically, it's an orc, but
There.
Oh, sorry. I meant orc card.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that-
but I mean, like, if you
But
had
it's an
somebody.
orc
Yeah.
instead of a troll.
It's okay.
No, that's great,
Well,
that's great.
keywords are important in this set. Okay?
Yeah, sorry.
That was funny. That was great. I love that. And I think you're talking about a higher level sort of a game. We're seeing a lot of stuff here that's takes a lot of tracking. Like one of the things, one of the reasons that I probably don't play Modern yet is there's just so much stuff going on. There's so much you got to keep track of. Like you got to keep track of what's happening on your opponent's side, what's happening on your side, and like triggers and ongoing effects. So something like this is like in your upkeep phase. I think with a lot of the newer sets, a lot of the standard, you don't worry too much about that because it's a
true.
lot to keep track
we
of.
tend not to design very many cards with an upkeep cost anymore.
Yeah.
Modern Horizons, like in general, Magic players love complexity. Magic is almost
Yeah.
certainly the most complex game that exists, or at least that has a significant following. So we are complexity junkies. In general, we kind of have to keep a lid on that complexity and try to control it. But for Modern Horizons, we really just made a very deliberately complex wallow in decadent interactions.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I will say, like, I've been playing a lot on Arena, and I think it helps a little bit. And in it to be able to practice and understand how those interactions work. Although it does potentially make you sloppy because the computer keeps track of a lot of that
Yeah,
stuff.
but it's a great way to learn
Yes.
what all those rules and interaction points are when you get to see it all happen. And I certainly tightened up a lot of my technical play from playing on Arena and mostly on Magic Online, which was the sort of earlier version of Arena.
Yeah, I mean, you just you have your Sahili and you make your servo become the Crassus, and then it dies, and you're like, oh wait, it's a 0/0, and then you made that mistake, and then you learn from it.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on. So Orcish Hellraiser, that is our preview card here. That's our first card.
First preview.
First
First
preview.
preview
We have
card.
another preview. You want to talk a little bit about that one?
So we wanted to have a lot of little in-jokes in the set, just all these little winking nudges to past Magic cards and kind of let the players in on the joke. And so one of the sort of funny things that is just a fact in Magic is we had this old card in the first Magic set called Disenchant. It could destroy an artifact or an enchantment for 1 and a white mana. And then many years later, in I think it was the Onslaught expansion, we made a new version of Disenchant, and this time we were like, okay, Disenchant isn't white anymore. Disenchant is green from now on, and we made this card called Naturalize, and it's exactly the same as Disenchant, except the little white pip in the corner has been changed to a green pip, and that was the New World Order from then on. I thought that was a little funny that there were these two cards that were essentially identical.
Yeah.
And even later, we invented this mechanic called hybrid mana, where you get to pay either color, and it kind of has a little slash through the mana symbol. And so we designed a new version of Disenchant Naturalize that had the hybrid mana symbol, so you could pay either white or green as kind of a little reference to, hey, these two cards are the same. Isn't that kind of funny?
But what's it called? Because the name of the card is the real
It's
joke.
true, and it's called Natural Chant. I was also on the names and flavor text team for this one.
Oh
so
my gosh, yeah.
I made sure that some of the names were on the nose.
Yeah.
Well, so the
references
two
there.
preview cards both seem to kind of address what you were talking about with, the kind of push or central impetus for Modern Horizons, which is bringing back some of the older, more complicated mechanics, or referencing them, or at least honoring them, and then making jokes so you can laugh about your knowledge of Magic.
That's right.
So, Orcish Hellraiser is one that's diving into kind of the mechanical history of the game, and Nature's Chant is one that is just touching on some of the cards that have transitioned from one color to the other and their names, and it's just, the two-pronged approach, basically.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really excites me about this, and I might be going way too deep into it from a meta level, but it seems like the color, we all know the color wheel is very important and key to Magic.
Right,
and
the
making
color
sure
wheel is sort of the philosophy that there are 5 colors in Magic, and certain powers can only appear in certain colors.
Yeah.
And that way you don't sort of end up with all the decks playing the same.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with, there's very powerful identity there, but there's definitely limitations there as well. I think as the game evolves, you start to see, some things are just so powerful, and, are the colors themselves still balanced? And I think with this hybrid mana is something that you can do, you have printed both in the past. It's not exactly taking liberty, but it's kind of almost saying, we're going to try out some stuff here. Yeah, try out some new stuff.
I say whoever was on your art team, they did a really good job on combining both of the separate. Yeah.
I didn't even realize
Yeah,
that. If
did
you're
you
looking at the
not?
cards, it has
Yeah.
the tree and
Right,
the
And the hand.
Yeah, I
or
was so
disenchanting.
happy that we got the sword turning into the tree there, because that was always my favorite naturalized art.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, so we should be seeing those in the stream now, those pictures of those previews. Very exciting to see some new cards. And I think that's something in and of itself, just how excited Magic players get about seeing the cards. No one's waiting anymore. No one's cracking those first packs of the pre-release, right? And seeing the cards
Right.
for the first time. All the people, especially for a set like this, everyone is just pouring over these cards, already brewing based on what they're seeing.
Right, and this is always my favorite time of year, preview season, when we have 2 or 3 weeks where we're showing off the new cards, and I just get to scour the internet for everyone reacting to them
Yeah.
and seeing what they think. And it's like Christmas 4 or 5 times a year.
So a couple more questions from chat. Somebody asked, what time period is Urza's card from? Because apparently they were dead.
Yes.
So like, does Modern Horizons, do the cards in Modern Horizons have a particular time period that in the story of Magic they're set in? Or are you pulling from where you kind of need to pull to get the references in?
Modern Horizons has no unified setting in place or in time.
Okay.
We gave ourselves the freedom to bring in characters who've been dead for thousands of years. In the case of Urza, just to directly answer the specific question, this is Urza as he was late in the Brothers' War. He had achieved a position of great authority as the Lord High Artificer of the Kingdom of Krug. And so he is the sort of foundational character of Magic the Gathering. He's the protagonist of the very first storyline.
Yeah.
And sort of the repercussions of his actions in that first storyline kind of reverberated throughout the entire story. So he was this powerful artificer that basically ruined the entire world by having a war against his brother.
So there's a little bit of time travel in this set, you might say.
Yeah, it's not that anyone is necessarily traveling through
Right,
time,
right.
but we get to just draw things from all the different, dozens of planes that Magic takes place on, and just anywhere in the time period.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. If this is the set to kind of celebrate the history of Magic in a lot of ways, it's the player sitting there remembering some of their favorites from the past.
Yeah.
And then some of the cards, we did not set them on a known plane. We're just like, okay, here's a zombie ninja. We are not going to tell you where this zombie ninja is from. You've never seen a zombie ninja before. You may never see one again, but he's from somewhere.
Well, it is a ninja,
Yeah.
so you're
Yeah.
not likely to see it or know where it came from anyway. So
That's a good point.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So you
Very
can
appropriate.
think of this game or this whole like setting as maybe an older player sitting down reminiscing about the good times.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Remember
Set
that
in
time
the
that we
memory.
fought the zombie ninja together?
yeah, this is zombie ninjas.
So another question was whether the players will see more of the 9 Titans. Apparently there was the Weatherlight Saga. I'm not deep into this. But
So our main characters, at least these days in the storyline, are called Planeswalkers. These are the basically wizards that can travel between planes, and they all have different powers. But the 9 Titans were a sort of earlier team of Planeswalkers that fought a battle against these evil cyborg zombies called the Phyrexians. Will we be seeing more of them here? We're certainly not going to see any Planeswalker cards of them. There might be some references to them, but I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
not this time, but certainly we are keeping them in mind as potential people to bring back. We've certainly published some cards of them, even though most of them are dead at this point.
Yeah.
And we'll probably continue to do so in the future. I will say it's not particularly a goal to make cards of all 9 of them.
Sure.
I must admit that I really hate some of those characters.
Oh.
So you don't want to bring them back just to kill them?
Yeah.
Kill them again?
Yeah, I don't know.
So there's questions about some of the keywords that might be coming back. I think people specifically asked about Shadow and Evolve. Do you know if those are being returned, or can you discuss it if they are?
I'd rather not. I'd rather not. Spoil anything about
Okay.
the cards that are coming.
So you
up.
can neither confirm nor
Yeah,
deny.
no, yeah,
I neither
neither
confirm
confirm
nor
nor
deny.
deny.
Okay.
But,
Someone did have another question about whether there are other hybrid mana cards, and if how the rarity for those cards works. Like, will there be commons that are hybrid mana effects?
Yeah. Well, the Nature's Chant is common.
yeah, that one's a common. That's certainly the only common. You will see hybrid mana on at least one other card, and it's a really funny one.
Oh, teasers.
Teasers.
And one more question is simply true name Nemesis, fact or fiction?
Oh, fiction.
All right.
That card is not very fun to play in tournaments.
Okay.
So
All right.
he will not be appearing in this set.
Confirmed, fiction.
Confirmed fiction.
Fiction.
I'm willing to just say no.
Okay.
I mean, I have so many questions. I don't know how much more time we can spend on this, though. If we're
We have some time.
okay, excellent,
People are excited.
cool. So we're just delving a little bit into some of the thoughts around this new set. Like, it sounds you had a lot of fun, and I'm imagining it's going to be pretty successful. So we might see more modern sets in the future. Or?
I mean, it all depends on whether people buy it.
Yeah,
which
that's
nobody's
fair.
bought any
Yeah.
of it yet. So, ultimately, that is the final proof: is do people buy it? But certainly, I had a huge amount of fun making it, and would love to make another one because this was just basically I got to make a Magic set for myself.
Yeah.
So I've been playing Magic since the beginning, and so this was very self-indulgent for
Yeah.
me.
So a little bit of some of the returning keywords from this set in particular. So there's snow,
Right.
right? That is something that we can talk about now, that has been officially previewed.
And that's something that I remember because Ice Age was my set.
Right.
So
And I was reading a little bit on the history because I played like way back in '96 and then didn't play at all and then came back to it. So snow isn't something that I remember playing with, but it's definitely like there was some potential difficulties around there because it was just like a snow basic land in the past. And now I've looked at some of the lands and it looks like they're kind of like a snow island and some stuff. And then you can use this new snow mana to cast snow stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, is there like not exactly another? Because that's the thing too. Like we were talking about the color wheel. There are the 5 colors. That's the back of the card. You can't change the back of the card ever,
Right.
right? So that you're beholden to that a little bit, but can play around potentially a little bit as well.
Right. So snow, as Derek mentioned, was originally introduced in Ice Age back in 1995, the Ice Age expansion. So they had these snow-covered lands that were otherwise the same as the regular
they just
basic
look
lands.
cooler.
Yeah.
They looked cooler because they had snow on them.
Right,
And they
yeah.
were called snow-covered islands, snow-covered forest, etc.
Yeah.
And they didn't do a huge amount with them in Ice Age. They had a few cards that cared about it. And it was just kind of weird. It's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And then many years later, we decided to come out with a sequel set to Ice Age. And the sort of joke that we told everyone that they believed and then they got really mad about it was that it had been designed back in 1995 and somebody lost it in a filing cabinet and forgot to print it. And so we brought out, okay, we're going to print the set now. Here it is. And it had sort of rationalized the snow lands to sort of, it had a special mana symbol that was shaped like a snowflake instead of like a sun or a tree. And then you could use mana from snow sources, which include those snow basic lands and a few other things, to pay those snow costs. So it acted, but any color could do it. I can use my snow-covered mountain to pay a snow cost. I can use my snow-covered island. I can use my boreal druid or whatever.
So then my snow-covered mountain can do either red or snow.
Right.
Okay.
Basically,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So, this was funny in that context. Like, okay, we found this in the filing cabinet, and we're taking this mechanic that didn't really quite make sense, and we're rationalizing it and sort of turning it into something that feels a little more, thoughtfully designed. But I was like, this is this is great in that context of the Cold Snap set, the sequel set to Ice Age. But I was like, I would never want to use this anywhere else. And then we were working on Modern Horizons. And like people like the Snowlands. They play them in Commander. They play them in Modern.
Yeah.
I was like, it would be cool if we put some full art Snowlands in here for people to use in their decks. The really tall art where the art takes up almost the entire card. People love collecting those basic lands.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's put some reprints of these snowlands, the snow-covered island, snow-covered mountain in here. It's like, well, if we're going to do that, we better put some cards that care about
the
snow.
snow.
So we put some new snow cards in here. The ones you've seen are pretty typical. They look a lot like the ones you saw in Cold Snap, but you're going to see some weird stuff later on.
Will there be polar bears?
We already did the
Apparently
polar
a 2/2
bears.
polar bear.
The polar
there's-
bears were in Ice Age.
Okay.
But Yeah, I don't think there's any polar bears in this set. I think all the bears in this set are brown.
Oh.
But,
Fair. You have more questions?
We do, but we can keep. Well, sure. Let's go through some of these
let's go
questions.
to more questions.
There were a number of people who asked about specific cards, but it sounds like you don't want to try to address those.
yeah, I mean, if it's something that has already been previewed, I'd be happy to say things about it if I have anything to say about it.
Yeah, we don't know. So to avoid going through a list of can you confirm or deny the existence of this card?
Oh yeah, let's not.
Yep. So
You'll all know in a couple of weeks what is or isn't in here.
No, confirm nor deny.
So, what about the development of MOX Tantalus? I think was recently previewed. Someone wanted to know like how the development of that card went. So, do you have anything you want to share about that?
So in the Time Spiral expansion, which was 2006, 2007, something like that, we had this mechanic called Suspend, where you would pay the suspend cost and kind of put the card on the side with some glass beads on it. And every turn you take a bead off, and when you took the last one off, you got to cast the card from outside the game. And so it was sort of a way to, instead of paying a bunch of mana for these things, you were paying in time. And some of these just cost no mana at all to even suspend it, and you only paid in time. And a lot of these cards were riffs off of really broken cards from early Magic, just absurdly powerful cards that we would never print today because they were just way too powerful. And those were some of my favorites in Time Spiral. I just love that stuff. And so, but there were a few broken cards we hadn't made with Suspend yet. We didn't get to all of them the first time. I was like, oh man, I want to do another one. So I was like, I want to do a MOX. The MOXes are these artifacts that tap for mana and don't cost any mana to play. And most of them are just completely insane and completely busted, and we were totally irresponsible. maybe this one will prove to be like that also. I think maybe this one's fine and it's not going to break anything, but maybe it's going to be crazy.
They'll find a way.
It's always a bit risky when you make a card that doesn't cost any mana but generates mana, or generates more mana than it costs. So this is another one in that line of suspend cards based on the early.
So there's some suspense about whether it will be broken or not.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite character in Magic?
Ooh.
Or at least what is your favorite character in this set, perhaps?
I can't say yet. Like, favorite character in the set has not been revealed yet.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good answer though.
We tried to get some really sweet legendary creatures in here. Some of them are based on old characters from the lore that never made it onto cards, or we wanted to make a refresh of their card to give them a new design. Some of them are new characters, but.
Corollary to that, can you name
of the ones revealed, I'm really excited about Sarah, who's the planeswalker that created the Sarah Angels. I've been wanting to make a card based on that character basically since I started working at Wizards of the Coast, and this was finally the chance. I tried several times and it always failed for whatever reason. There's a lot of places where a card can run aground essentially and not make it past the reefs or whatever. But we brought her into harbor this time.
Because there's a lot of Sarah stuff in there.
There
'Cause I've
is.
seen the name Sarah, but we haven't seen Sarah herself, right?
So speaking of favorite characters, and you mentioned that you didn't like some of the Titans before, somebody was curious how you design a character you don't like. So when you have to design a card for the set, and it's a character that you don't personally like, do you work on that yourself? Do you have a process for that? Or do you try to shift that to somebody else in the team who maybe is a fan of that character, and everybody kind of works on what they like? So how does that work?
Well, as a game designer, I need to sort of divorce my personal preferences from the process a lot of the time. Like I have my own particular play style, I have my favorite color, I have my favorite characters.
Black, obviously.
I need to empathize with all these other players who maybe they like to play a prison lockdown deck where they prevent everyone from doing anything. And I need to make a card for that guy, even though I'm definitely not that guy.
Yeah.
So it just comes with the territory that you have to design for all of your players, not just for yourself. A lot of the time, if I'm designing to a character, I'll get a brief from our creative team, our world building team, like, here's what this person is about, here's what their powers are, here's what their story is, and I'll usually design either based on an important story moment or base it on what's their power about. If they're all about shooting lightning out of their fingers, then maybe they'll deal some damage. If they had a situation where there was a tragic death in their family and it caused them to become supercharged with grief power or something, like maybe it'll be like a thing where whenever a creature dies, something triggers on this card and it gets more powerful. So those are sort of my two basic approaches to designing to a character.
On some of a related question, somebody mentioned that they feel like a lot of the ideas or the art in some of the art for this new set is very organic or subtle, and they were curious what your inspiration was for that. Was that an intentional thing for the set, or did it just kind of happen organically?
Organically in nature.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't the art director on the set. Cynthia Shepard was the art director for this, so she could probably speak better to that sort of thing. I mostly handled the game design aspects of it.
Is there an interplay between game design and art direction? The
absolutely. Like, we had to communicate very very closely between the Kelly Diggs, who was writing the art descriptions, Cynthia Shepard, who was directing the artists, and my team and the team that came after mine, who designed the cards, had to stay in communication, because a lot of these jokes don't work as well if you don't have the art and the name and the flavor text to support it. So natural chant is the example here, where we have the art gag where it has the same sword with the tree coming out of it, and the name gag where it combines one half of one card name and one half of the other card name, and then the mechanical part where it can play as either one of the cards. Right?
So we've got maybe like two more questions from chat.
Okay.
While we're going why don't you see which some of your questions here we want to cover, because we do still have our big old pile of Kickstarters to get through.
Yeah, I think that should be enough, just the chat questions. Although I just want to say Lightning Skelemental, that was one of the ones previewed, and I really like that name. I just wanted to say it because I think it's very clever. I don't know who came up with that, but because it's a skeleton elemental. It's a skelemental.
Yeah, we had a whole team of people writing the names in flavor text, led by Allison Lures, and that one was a hard one, because we wanted the playtest name for that was Blightning Elemental, because it has the mechanic from the card Blightning and the other mechanic from the card Ball Lightning.
That's good.
So it was, anyway, but that was not quite. Wasn't quite there, and it didn't really incorporate the cool skull imagery that was in there. So fortunately, the names and flavor text team came through with an even cooler name.
So I'll combine these two questions, actually. How high of an expert level do you think this new set is? And are there particular archetypes of players or decks that you think modern the cards coming out in Modern Horizons are particularly suited for, or will kind of buff a little bit more?
Sure. This is definitely an expert level set. It's going to be more difficult than something like War of the Spark. That was the most recent set that came out. So if you've played Modern Masters set, though, or Time Spiral, it'll feel kind of like that. It should be about that level of complexity of a Masters set. So we release one of those, about every year. And so if you've played that, you'll probably, if you like that kind of thing, you'll probably like this.
So don't be intimidated. Like, if you're a seasoned Magic player, if you've been playing for a while, then you're fine. Don't be intimidated by it. But it's definitely not an intro. You're still kind of learning set.
Yeah, and any experienced Magic player should be able to find something fun here.
Okay.
And as far as modern impact goes, we very much focused on the sort of lower tier decks. Like, there are already a bunch of really powerful decks, and our goal was to make the format more diverse, right? And so you can't do that by powering up the decks that are already powerful. That just kind of pushes everything else out of contention, right? So we focused on the decks that were almost there, almost powerful enough to compete at the top tables, but not quite powerful enough. So we tried to design cards in a very targeted way to improve those decks and hopefully, increase the diversity of the
Was
most
there
powerful
one or
decks.
two deck types that you specifically remember working on and boosting?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the tribal decks were a big thing where you have lots of cards of a specific creature type. Slivers were a big one that we worked on. So slivers are these little bug creatures that are they're shapeshifters that can share all of their abilities with the rest of the slivers. So we made a bunch of slivers. We made a bunch of changelings that can go into any tribal deck.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
that was the big one, and then just trying to design some things for like the burn deck and the infect deck and things like
Nice.
that.
Cool. Well, thank you very, very much for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
you.
I
Yeah,
think
thank
you
you.
were a
Yeah.
fantastic inaugural guest.
Yes.
We had a lot of questions from chat, so we really appreciate you coming out, giving us both your time and some preview cards.
Sweet, sweet
Yes.
All right.
cards.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Man.
Oh, that's a
whole lot. So
That was a lot.
we have just a handful of minutes to try to race through a bunch of Kickstarters.
Yeah. Race
All
through the
right. Let's do this
Kickstarter.
very-
Let's do
relatively
the
quickly.
race.
Yeah.
We're going to do this a little bit differently. Some of either of you can kind of hop in when you want to grab a Kickstarter and be excited by it.
Okay.
So, with 1 day left, we have Mega Metro City, which I would summarize as if you ever wanted a capital KB Kickstarter board game, as we have discussed, with tiles and minis and a whole big box and a ton of things and a ton of components, and you wanted that, but River City Ransom or Double Dragon,
Yes.
this is it.
Yeah.
You play minis traveling through a city, punching other people, and fighting your way to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's extremely cute, very 80s style. As an example, one of the counters to track your health and points and stuff like that is a old cassette tape,
Yes.
and you just
Yeah,
rotate
the
the two
little-
sides to get the numbers you want. So if you love old school arcade beat 'em ups,
Yes.
or you want a dice tower in the shape of an arcade stand-up cabinet,
Sorry.
then
I want this
This is
thing.
Mega Metro City is your kind of thing.
Yes.
With 3 days left, we have Cleopatra and the Society of the Architects. And this is a re-release, an update, a revamp of the components. I believe actually a change of the rules as well with some new content and revision to the rules. But it was originally published in 2006. And it's an architectural game. You're all playing architects. You're trying to get Cleopatra's favor to build her the greatest monument ever. And it's actually a 3D thing that you kind of assemble together. One of the things you can get is magnets to make sure that it all clicks and aligns properly. It seems to be a very kind of traditional Euro-y building game,
Yeah.
but with a little more of a tactile element in this this release, including a $100 premium super deluxe edition that comes with metal components, big box, things like that.
Just the
Okay.
table presence of this game. If nothing else, go and look at the pictures of it because
Oh,
it
yeah.
just looks
It's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah, you are very much actually building
An
a
actual tower.
Yeah. Next on our list is A Cool and Lonely Courage. We've talked a little bit about role-playing games that are a little more serious in the past, like the Night Witches and the Rosenstrasse. This one specifically is about the heroic woman of the SOE, which is the Special Operations Executive in occupied France. So these women were part of the resistance. They went through very difficult, often tragic times. So this you can actually role play these real world, very intense stories.
And I really love games that are touching on those elements of history.
Yeah.
It can be difficult to do that respectfully, but it gives an opportunity for people to learn or explore about something that they may not have heard about before. I certainly don't think that in school or in movies we see a whole lot about what role women played in the resistance in France.
Yeah.
Yes.
So having a role-playing game that is only about their experience is really intriguing to me.
Yeah. The one thing I like about this game mechanic, one, you start off as a prisoner of Nazis, and you essentially go through your memories of how you got there. The bigger thing is that how you tell the story is how they choose who lives, whose story gets told, and who dies, depending on how you as a player with your other fellow teammates choose who goes on.
Yep.
And such.
Yeah, so it's all played in flashback. So, you know,
Yeah.
you all start having been captured by the Nazis, awaiting whatever your fate is going to be.
Yes.
You play through the history of the character. You have a deck of cards, and the suit of the card kind of determines what theme your scene that you're describing is supposed to relate to. And then at the end, you have a chance to either use some of the cards you have left for yourself or pass them to teammates. And then you're going to determine who lives, who escapes, you know, who has a happy ending, who dies,
Yeah.
but also who's remembered by history,
Yes.
because that doesn't necessarily mean that your character lived or died.
Yeah.
So going from that
Going
to
from that,
Pirates,
Yep.
Ratman Fantasy Football Team, totally non-infringing, but
On
for
blood.
your favorite minis, ball-related
With
game.
blood, maybe there
Yep.
may
With
be
blood.
blood
Yep.
involved.
there might be
Some
a
sort
bowl.
of arena
Yep,
or
a blood, a
Arena,
receptacle,
receptacle.
Yeah,
the Ichor
receptacle.
cup. Yeah, so with 4 days left, there's Pirates, and this is, again, it's 3 different largely rat-themed fantasy football teams.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first one is, did you want to play a team of rat pirates? Here you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second one is, did you want to play a team of mutated rat underwater deep sea divers? Here you go.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
third one is, did you want to play a team of goblins and trolls and rats from a cave? Sure, here
Sure.
you can get that too. The title was too much of a pun to ignore. The sculpts look really, really cool.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
the other thing that I thought was neat is that they're not as football-y as some fantasy
Yeah.
football. So they're, I think, pretty easily adapted to just a normal, miniatures war game or something like that if you just want really distinct different units. So if you have a Skaven army out there and you're playing Sigmar and you want some pirate characters to lead your Skaven into battle,
Yeah.
then you should check this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know how you get like humanized rats? You go and do a gene funk, right? You might do some gene funk. Another 6 days left to go. Gene funk 2090. It's a cyber biopunk RPG set in the 5th edition, but instead of relying on magic, it's more of technology. So it's kind of cool. You might be a group of what they call cadres doing a job for mega corporations. So you're running errands in the shadows.
You're moving quickly in the darkness.
Yeah.
You're moving quickly in the darkness.
Interesting.
And, yeah,
It all ties together.
it all ties together. You
Dark
know.
sprinters.
But yeah, if you're like me, I'm a big transhumanism ist. So this is something that will appeal to you. So if you ever played like Eclipse Phase or Shadowrun, this is probably the RPG for you.
I found it particularly interesting because instead of playing like Shadowrunners or independent operatives who are
Yes.
brought together by a fixer, you actually play a startup.
Yeah.
And your business is just to do illicit dealings for people. So it had a kind of a cute element of like startups are, a thing people talk about now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to play one, like it's a cute way to do that. And then the other thing I thought was really noteworthy is that a lot of cyberpunk games don't really directly address the inequality that is inherent in the concept.
Yes.
And I don't know how well this handles it, but the Kickstarter campaign at least does directly acknowledge that. It does explicitly, talk about the rich and the mega corporations and the role they play in kind of creating the society that oppresses everybody else below it.
Yeah, but even with its oppressive state, it's a very bright and vibrant
Yep. Yep.
book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another Kickstarter is 6 days to go is De Vulgari Eloquentia, which is a gorgeous-looking deluxe version of a Euro game about the origins of the Italian language.
Yes.
So it has a lot of the trappings of a Euro game. You have merchants, you have clergy, you have some soldiers. I think you can become the Pope, things like that. But instead of just forming a mercantile campaign and trying to extract as much value as you can out of things, you're trying to make sure that you are influential in the language that emerged in Italy at that time, which strikes me as a really intriguing theme to kind of take some of the traditional Euro game elements and take it just a little bit off the rails.
Yeah.
And there was some discussion at the beginning of the show or before the show about the level of complexity of this, because it definitely looks like a very involved game, but there were some whispers that maybe it was a little closer to Ticket to Ride, so it could potentially be something to look out for.
Or at least favor like a. Several people seem to think this is a very good intro-y game, or that's or at least something that's very accessible.
Yeah.
So they also have a demo on Tabletopia, I realized.
Ooh, nice.
So if you want to try the game out, I think the rulebook is available for download. You can play it on Tabletopia. So. Again, like the same kind of that we were talking about Carpe Diem earlier. If you're into Euro games, it sounds like you should check this one out. This is another one that had come out almost 10 years ago, so it's nice to have a new version out for it.
Yeah. The cool thing about this that I like is if you get the deluxe set, it comes with wooden and metal pieces, which I like in terms of if you're doing you can feel the textures.
Yep. That, like, to me, that's kind of what Kickstarter is for. Is like deluxe versions of a thing that you know is going to be pretty good quality.
Bits.
I guess it is just a very wonderful world we live in. Speaking of which, we happen to be talking about a Kickstarter game called It's a Wonderful World. 6 days left to go. It is a if you're ever into like terraforming Mars, it's a game based off of like a 1980s big apocalypse happened and you got to rebuild society. So obviously you are the leader and know the absolute truth about everything, and all those other people are just spreading lies.
Yep.
So it's pretty much a world builder kind of game.
Very cool flavor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be closer to Seven Wonders, because it's a drafting game where you're passing things around. It doesn't seem like it's quite as isolated or quite as complex as Terraforming Mars. But it does seem like it's maybe between Seven Wonders and Terraforming Mars, in that you're drafting projects, but you have to kind of plan the order in which you get resources is a little more rigid. So you have to kind of plan your progress through the turn to make sure that you got the right projects to get the resources you want to pay for the projects later. So it seems like I like drafting games a lot, but I didn't find Terraforming Mars to really excite me.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this might kind of merge some of those two elements together.
That'd be it. And then plus, if you enjoy this game, it's replayable. It has a legacy mode, so anything you played beforehand, you can go ahead and expand upon that world.
It has a heritage campaign, is what they're calling it.
Yeah,
like
heritage. Sorry,
a legacy kind of experience.
Legacy adjacent.
Yes. Yep.
Is the hotness.
I think people are going to get more and more creative with legacy, but no, we're not going to make you burn your cards.
Yeah, exactly.
So another Kickstarter with 6 days to go as well is the Trilemma Adventures Compendium. And this is really exciting to me because it's a collection of one-page dungeons. And if anybody's not familiar with that, it's a thing that's very popular online. There's a one-page dungeon contest every year. You can get those on like Drive-Thru-RPG. It's a great resource if you want really quick like one-shots, because it's basically a map, and then around it is just explains the circumstance and situation.
Yeah.
So this one in particular always gives you an isometric view of a map, so you kind of get a real visceral sense of how things are laid out, even if it's not a battle map. It's just a little more evocative. And then there's flavor and encounters and details and stuff scattered around it. And the Kickstarter funded stretch goals for 5th edition rules, Dungeon World rules, OSR rules.
Nice.
So it's a lot of variety, but it's really just good to have on hand for those one-shots. Or you need something to drop into a campaign. Or maybe you just want inspiration for different kind of sandboxy locations that you can sprinkle or build into a larger overarching campaign.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then the final Kickstarter I wanted to cover is not a game, but I figured it would be of interest to gamers. And it's Gurtia? We had to bring in a German expert here.
A German language specialist.
No sprechen Sie Deutsch.
So this is an art book about the kings of hell and the kings and princes of hell, and in particular it uses the original Ars Goetia translation that Crowley and Mathers and a lot of 18th or 19th century, 18th century magicians translated. So it includes the original translation with really gorgeous art, and they funded a 16-card Oracle deck. So you're going to get like 16 kings and princes of hell, what they're about, how to summon them, what their symbols are, what their domains are, what ancient magicians and occultists said about them. So if you need inspiration for demons in your campaign, or just really like occult in general, then this is a gorgeous kind of project to check out.
But yeah,
and that is it that we have for
today.
Kickstarter.
All right. Whew.
But our outro is going to be a little bit different too, because we are not done with
Oh,
I'm not done
with
yet.
our firsts.
what
So,
All right. Well,
what's
I'll
the
take it.
first?
So this has been TableTakes,
Yes.
presented by Emma, Bonsai, Derek, with special guest Ethan Fleischer
Yes,
today.
yes.
But wait, there's more.
there's more.
There's more.
So we're gonna cut away for a little bit to reset because we have a new show, a new segment that we're gonna do where we talk through with a local retail guest. Mox Boarding House has sent someone out. We're just gonna talk through, preview, look at, discuss as many of the games that have come out over the past week or so as we can. So if you are curious about what is out in stores now, what just came out, if you're the kind of person who wants to pick up something new for the weekend, then hang out for us. Give us a few minutes to reset the set, and then we will be talking through a variety of new games.
Ooh.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting.
So if
Stay
you're-
tuned.
Stay tuned.